Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Raw Show with Michael McDonald. I have a very special guest. We have Daniel Veiga joining me today. Dan, thanks for joining me on the show.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Dan runs an agency that provides full marketing services for local businesses. He also has a course where he shows others how to grow and scale their own agencies as well, and also how to run Facebook ads for local businesses. So he focuses on that as well, which is pretty cool. He runs one of the fastest growing entrepreneur groups on Facebook that's reached over 51,000 members in just 1 year as well, which is pretty fast growth, to be fair. I mean, most groups don't really get to that number in the first place. And he's got a website which is danielveiga.com where you can find out all the good stuff. So, Dan, I thought we'd start with your background. So could you share with us where you were born and what it was like for you growing up?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in New York, in the U.S., and a small city it was called Rochester, which is way up kind of by the Great Lakes area up there, near Buffalo, if any of you know where that is. So I mean, I wasn't like those success stories that that other people have talked about where they grew up poor and things like that. I grew up a pretty decent lifestyle. Both of my parents worked, and I had siblings as well that were much older than I was. So I kind of grew up almost like a single child, because my next sibling to my age, she's about 10 or 12 years older than me. I really never calculated it, but she's older than I am, and then I have other brothers and sisters who are older as well. So, and I never really grew up with them like in the household. But that's where I grew up. And then when I was about 7.5, I moved out of New York, and we moved to Florida. And it was just my parents and I that moved. So I was 3. We went down to Florida, and that's where I grew up, and I lived almost for the next 18 years after we had settled there. And then from there, that's where I grew up. I had too many jobs. I had probably about 22 different jobs between the ages of like 16 and 22. So I was always bouncing from like one job to another. I'm the type of person that like if I can't just settle on one thing because I'll get bored on it. I always have to find something new.
Right, got you.
And same thing happened with college. I attended 4 different colleges in Florida, and I dropped out of all of them. I never completed any one of those. I did complete my law enforcement certificate, which only lasted about a year, that schooling. So that wasn't too bad. But like traditional colleges for like degrees or anything, I went to 4 of them, dropped out of them, didn't complete any of them. Actually, I did complete 1 semester. I'll take that back. And so by the time I graduated my law enforcement certificate, I had, we had the opportunity to move to California. So from Florida, we were there for about 18 years. And then we had an opportunity to move over to California. My brother-in-law asked us to move out there. And right before that, I had, I didn't want to continue working like a regular job like most people do. I wanted to do something different, something for myself where, I could at least do my own hours. I could work whenever I wanted to. I was like, I don't want to have to move to California and then either like, because here in the United States, if you have a certificate for law enforcement from one state, if you move to another state, you had to take the training all over again, So I was like, I don't want to go through this like a whole entire year just because now we're moving. I can't become a cop in Florida. I was like, I don't want to do the same training again in California and become a cop out there. I'm like, so let me start at least finding something to work from home so I could take that job with me and not have to like find a new job just because of relocation,
Makes sense, yeah. What else happened?
Yeah, so I did that. So that's when I started finding like simple work at home jobs. I would look online and I would find jobs that would allow me to take like inbound call center, like an inbound call center representative. I did some remote technical support at home as well, and I did a couple live help and live chat type ticket support systems for like third party or online companies like servers and things like that. So I did that for a while, and right before we moved to California, I started seeing different people online make money doing websites. So back in high school, I forgot, maybe I think during my sophomore year, my 10th grade year, I had a class where I had to build websites. This was like for about half a semester, and I enjoyed it a lot. So looking at those opportunities from people kind of reminded me back of my high school days when I was building websites in class, and it was something I enjoyed. I was like, what if I could just do this like full time? It's besides working from home from these different jobs. What if I could also build websites and I can make money doing that, because I've seen other people doing so. So I started applying for a couple different jobs that I would see on Craigslist. These are, most of the jobs that I applied were other small design agencies that needed help as a developer, because a lot of these small agencies, they really don't have the cash to hire someone on staff full time. So they outsource a lot of their jobs, right? And that's exactly what I wanted. I never had sales experience at all. I had a hard time trying to find like my own B2B clients. So I'm like, if I could just partner with an agency that had the clients that could give them to me, that would make my job a lot easier, because I wouldn't have to do any selling. I would speak their language, or at least they would understand the language that I spoke, which is technical, and they would just supply me the jobs, the people of their clients. So I did that. I landed 2 clients that way before we ended up moving to California. And that right there is pretty much where my agency started.
Right, so did your agency start it off the back of those clients then? So you got your clients from an agency, and then you then decided to start your own after that. What was the tipping point for that?
Right. So yeah. So those 2 clients that I got right before we moved to California, that was kind of like the creation of the start of my agency, doing web design and development. So,
Right, yeah.
For a little bit of time, for a couple months, until I started getting more and more clients, I was kind of freelancing by myself. But then there was a time where I'm like, I'm working like 60, 80 hours. I'm already living in California, working 60, 80 hours a week. I'm like, I can't just do this myself. Plus, there was a couple projects that, required, more heavy like database development, things like that, which I'm not that great at. So I'm like, I need to start finding like a team of people that I can outsource to on a regular basis. And that's really like where that true agency model started becoming. So instead of just freelancing by myself, I started getting a team together that would help me complete these projects. And that's when I was starting to scale. So living in California, I had landed a project that paid me about $5,000 plus the other ones that I had already, had acquired in Florida. So my life was great, right? Making $5,000 plus, a couple other gigs on the side. I was probably doing maybe $6,000 or $7,000 a month. Things were pretty well. And then right before, this was back in, let me think, 2018. So 2018, we had moved to California in 2017. This was October 2017. And then a year later in 2018, my brother-in-law, he had the one that asked us to move out there. He was shipped over to Afghanistan for the war, because he was a SWAT officer with San Diego police, and he rejoined the military again. He got shipped off, and he got killed in action 2 weeks into his deployment. So that totally threw everything off for us, because we were living at his house. So the lawyers they came in, they intervened, they took a lot of, they took away the houses that he had and everything like that. And, they put it into a trust, which he had set up. So, the last thing on our mind was like, if he goes to war, if he doesn't come back for whatever reason, like, we didn't have a plan B. Honestly, we didn't even have a plan A. we were kind of winging it. We were like, life is good. We're here at his house. We're paying minimal rent, helping with food, making, $6,000, $7,000 a month. Not bad. But then once that happened, we're like, okay, we have a couple months to like figure out what we're going to do, because like everything got taken away. And at that time, my wife was pregnant with our son, who was born. That he was killed in action in October of 2018, and then our son was born in December. So during that time, like that was like her last trimester of being pregnant, and that really put a lot of stress on her. So what happened to me, and this is the first time, I had during my agency, I had dropped my clients, or my clients had dropped from my agency 3 different times. So this time in California was the first time that they all left me. So I lost all my clients, and that was because I had to take care of like all the legal stuff, and pretty much had to take care of everything else because my wife she just couldn't deal with it, because of that reason.
Yeah.
So I lost my clients. I lost that $5,000 client, never got them back. I was pretty upset about that.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 clients, I'd gained them back, but it was a couple months afterwards. So kind of fast forward, our son was born. Now we're in 2019. The house, pretty much we have like 30 days left to move out of the house. So we ended up doing, we're like, hey, we need to move. We need to try to move back to Florida if we can. Or at the very least, like if we don't have enough money, we need to move back to Texas, or we need to move to Texas. Because my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, lives in Texas, in Brownsville to be exact. And we were like, we need to figure something out quickly before we're left homeless, So at this time, house is taken away. We got a couple family members to fly out to where we were, help us pack up in a truck. And literally at this time, like we maybe only had like $1,000 left to our name from everything that we had saved up, from those clients that I had. And right before we moved, I was able to get those 2 clients that I originally had back. So I was thankful. So while we moved to Texas, we ended up staying at my sister's house for a little while. I mean, at my sister-in-law's house for a little bit of time, for about a month or so. And, while I was there, then I started applying for pretty much the same type of job, being kind of like a third-party developer for small agencies. So I would look on Craigslist. I would look on just all sorts of sites that I could in order to try to get clients quickly,
So what did you actually do to get those clients then? Because you were left in a reasonably, not so comfortable position. So what was the first thing that came to your head, and then how did you get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I mean, so while being back in Florida, this was about maybe 10, 11 years ago. Everything was done through email. I was a big introvert, and I didn't have really like the courage or the guts to call someone or walk into their office and just start talking to them and kind of building a relationship. So like the easiest method for me to start a communication with someone was through email, So that's kind of where the cold email days of my agency really started. This was like over a decade ago. So I did the exact same method I did in Florida initially. I went to Craigslist and I started looking for people who needed web design and developers. So I didn't only look in my city where I lived. I looked nationwide on Craigslist. So I did that, and I sent out tons of emails, and I got on a bunch of calls throughout that month and a half time period that we were living with my sister-in-law in Texas. Before we ended up getting our own place. I just hustled. I mean, that's like the best word I could describe is I just hustled my butt off every day to try and build up my agency to where it was. This was like at that 5-6K mark.
So a lot of people do tend to have, I guess, preconceived notions about what hustling is. We often see a lot of entrepreneurs use the term hustle, and they might not be doing it as much as others, so to speak. So what would you define hustle as? So you run the Entrepreneurs Hustle group as well. So I imagine you probably got some sort of explanation for what hustle means.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, during the last 10 years, like, every time that we were always in a rut, my wife always, sorry, let me kind of go back. So every time we've always been in a rut, I always figured out a way to get out of it, So a lot of people, they struggle, which I think is a good thing, because like, think of your entrepreneurship as like a valley, right? Or as like a roller coaster that's always going up and down. During those down times, like when you're at the very, very bottom, is when you really figure out a way to get out of it on either on your own or with the help of someone else. In my case, it was always on my own, So during that time in California, and then like during the other 2 times that I lost my clients and things like that, like, that was like the down part of my entrepreneurship journey. So I always figured out a way to get out of it. So again, during the last 10 years, my wife, every time that I was able to figure it out, she would always tell me like, you hustled your way out of it, like you're a hustler. That's what you do. You're able to figure out a way to get out of the situation and make, our lives easier. So to me, hustle is just, figuring out a way to get out of this current situation that you're at in order to improve like your situation or your lifestyle, and that's whatever means necessary that you're going to be doing to get out of that situation. Like you got to do that. Right. So to me, that's hustle. It's just being able to do that.
So it's almost like you need that downward part to get you either motivated or inspired in order to do the things that I guess you wouldn't do otherwise, because it's almost like you would either find a way or make a way to get your way back. I mean, would you say the negativity was the motivation to do things? I mean, I'm not just sort of talking about yourself, Dan, but more like you kind of observations of what you're seeing from other entrepreneurs as well. Do you find people are more motivated by the negativity than like when things are going really well?
Well, I mean, I think when you're in that position, you're not motivated by anything. Like, the only thing that's going to motivate you is by, not living on the streets, Yeah. But I think, just looking back at because I've been an entrepreneur now for 13 years. So just looking back at the last 13 years of my life and seeing from what I started to where I am now, and like all those valleys and dips and moments of my entrepreneurship journey and what allowed me to get out of those runs. I strongly believe that everyone should go through those moments in time, because that's what's going to allow them to figure it out pretty much like on their own. That's going to give them like the courage and motivation. Their stories are going to come out of those moments, because like if I didn't have those moments, I wouldn't have just told you like the last 15 minutes of our podcast of the story of me kind of starting my journey. Right. So because like I believe if you have everything handed over to you, then like what's your story behind that? Like there will be none, and you really wouldn't be able to figure out a way to go to the next level, because going from like zero to $2,000 for some people could be a struggle, especially like if they have a job and they want to get out of it and they're like, I'm starting from zero, but I have no direction to go. I don't know what to do. Going to 0 to 2,000 can be super hard, right? Super difficult. So there's different milestones that you can hit, but by going through the down times and the struggles and figuring out a way to get out of it, you'll figure out a way to get to your goals, and whatever that goal would be, whether it's 2,000 a month, 10,000, 50, 100,000 a month, it doesn't matter. You're going to figure out a way to get there, and you're going to do everything that in your power to get to that point, if that's what you really want to do.
Do you think there's something to be said for, a lot of people that, particularly if things are going well, so if things are going really well, like you start to get comfortable and perhaps even a little bit too comfortable, perhaps you might start to, I wouldn't want to say complacent, because that's probably got more of a negative theme around it, but just having this element of being comfortable might actually, because you mentioned like £100,000 a month, which to a lot of people is more than what a lot of people would earn in a year. And there are agencies out there that are turning over a lot more than that even. And it seems like it takes a certain amount of grit, I guess, or motivation at every different level, at every different milestone that you hit, to be able to feel like it's worth hitting the next one. Because you might get to a point where you can afford everything that you have. Your lifestyle's afforded for, your family or your leisure time is afforded for. What's the drive that keeps agencies or consultants or service providers or products or businesses or whatever the case is? What is it that keeps people pushing past those limits?
Yeah, and the word complacent, I don't think of it as a negative phrase or word. During my law enforcement training, we use complacent a lot. As they told us while we were going through training, they were like, whatever you do, don't become complacent. Don't become a complacent police officer. Because when you become complacent, that's when the bad things are going to be happening to you. All your surroundings will just come down, and you're not going to understand what's going around you. You're going to have kind of tunnel vision. So I take like the exact same. It's weird because during that time, I never thought, 10 years later, I'd be using a lot of the strategies that I learned during my training as a police officer to like entrepreneurship, but a lot of it is totally relatable. But I agree, don't become complacent. You should always have a goal, whether that goal is, financial freedom, whether that goal is not to become, not to have the lifestyle that you had like last year, in order to improve yourself, whatever the goals are that you have, you need to have those goals in mind so you can continue pushing forward to the next level. Because as an agency model, doing lead generation for businesses, which is what my agency does, it can become very easy to hit, those $10,000-$20,000 months. And once you become comfortable or you become complacent because you become comfortable. And if you don't have goals in mind, then, you're going to stop prospecting, you're going to become lazy. You're not going to deliver the results to your clients anymore. Then you're going to lose your clients. Then you don't have pipelines set up. You don't have sales coming in. Then you lose all your clients. And then again, you start back from zero. So it's like, you come full circle back to where you were, which is what you hustled your way out of becoming,
So once you've set those goals, then is it just the goals that can be enough for you to push past that level of comfortable? I mean, it's almost like, do you want a house that you can afford, or do you want a house that you need to work hard to be able to afford, whatever that house is? So is it just a case of like having a goal that you want to achieve that's simply above what you have at the moment, or that you've achieved at the moment? Is that normally enough? I mean, there's that fear of like almost chasing the money at that point, where all your goal really is to make more money. I mean, is it just that, or do people put sort of their own meaning behind it? I mean, what's the conversation when you work with people that get to that point where they need the actual next goal, but it's almost something that they're striving towards? They might not need to strive towards it, but they might want to strive towards it. And for me at least, it's about having that level of connection with something that's pushing beyond just as far as you need to go. Does that make sense?
Right. No, that makes sense. And, and I think there's different levels of it when you really look at it. Like when I look at it, just to be transparent, I think when most entrepreneurs, they start, they do it for the money in a way, because they want to get out of the current situation that they're at. They're like, for example, like if you have a job and you're making $2,000 a month, in your head, you're like, if I could only work from home and have my own business and make $5,000 a month, like I'll be at a much better place than where I am now making $2,000. So in a small way, at least at the very beginning, I think people do it for the money, for the finances, but that's always tied into like, getting out of whatever struggle they have. It's, I don't believe it's only for the money, but it's to get out of the current situation that they're at. But, as you grow, as you've been in business for a while and you start hitting other goals, it's a lot more than that. It's, mindset's a huge thing, because I believe that different intervals of what you're making a month, like your mindset totally changes, I also think that, like, for example, from my situation, why I pushed so hard was because, I lost clients. my wife. So like first time, kind of go back to tell that story, because there was 3 different times that I lost clients. First time was when my brother-in-law passed away. I had to take care of all that, of all that situation. Second time was in 2013 in December. My wife, she had a pancreatic attack. So she was hospitalized for a month and a half, 2 different occasions. And that time again, she was put in the hospital and she had 20% chance to live. I had to take care of, being there. I had to attend to her, make sure everything was okay with the doctors in the hospital. I had to take care of, our kids. We have 3 kids right now. So there was like a lot of stress on me as well. And I was pulled in multiple directions. So I couldn't attend the clients that I had. So I'm like, again, that's the second time I lost all my clients. And then the third time I lost all my clients was in 2015 when, this was more of a decision that I made, was when I changed the direction of my agency. So instead of just doing design and development, I changed it in a direction of my agency really focusing on lead generation with Facebook advertising. So I was like, the clients that I had, I was like, I just don't do this anymore. I was like, I'll find someone who can help you, but I'm like, pretty much our business relationship, unless you want to do lead generation, will be over at this point. So that was 3 different times that I lost my clients. So what drives me in my business, I have multiple streams of income, not just my agency. The agency really to have a passive income lifestyle, in case something were to happen to my wife or me, or, I had to not be involved in my agency for like, a couple weeks at a time. I still had money rolling in. Right. So that's my agency. Then I have course sales as well, which is pretty much passive. And then I have my coaching, and my coaching, I focus on that more now in order to help other people get out of the situations that they're in order to have that lifestyle change as well with their agency. So there's different milestones. Just depends on where you are as an entrepreneur and, different streams of income that you have, because each stream of income has its own, goals and the reasons why will be different for each type of business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's almost like the goal becomes your why then, to a certain extent. If the goal's important enough, if the goal's meaningful enough, and I guess if it lights you up a little bit, you get emotional about the goal, then it's more likely to spur you on and to keep doing those things. When things do get difficult, that's almost a thing you always fall back on, I guess.
Right. Yeah. When things do become difficult, like when in 2015, 3 years ago, when I dropped all my clients on purpose, I had no Facebook ad clients, I was like, okay, I need to figure it out. I was like, I have maybe 2 months saved up, where I could, kind of figure out the direction that I want to go. But, I believe going through all the struggles for the past, 7 or 8 years with my agency before that time really helped me figure out a direction to go quickly and just be able to take that on head on straight. And then be able to grow my agency from 0 to, to whatever I wanted it to be, in order to like have that passive income coming in case anything were to happen again. So my main purpose was, the main goal at that time was not to have an agency that developed on that not to have an agency that depended on income from my clients that always paid late, because as a web design agency, when you send an invoice, most of the time they never, at least in my experience, and this was, before now, because now it's totally different. They pay out right on time. But before, they always took maybe a month, 2-3 months to pay my invoices. So it was almost like living, like working a 9-to-5 job where you're living paycheck to paycheck, but I was living project to project. So I was like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. I want to have, an agency where my clients pay me, and then I do the job for the remaining of the time period that they paid me for.
So what sort of transitioning a little bit into the agency model then. So explain to us what the agency model is and I guess how it compares to the work that you were doing before the agency, and then maybe share with us some examples perhaps of the different industries that an agency model might work in.
Right. So, I mean, there's lots of different agency models. When I started, it was I had an agency that focused on web design and development. You know, I did a lot of other things other than just that. You know, you could have called me the jack of all trades back then because I did almost everything. I did SEO, I did content marketing, I did a little bit of paid advertising as well. You know, I did graphic design. Well, I didn't actually do. I outsourced the graphic design stuff, but my agency back then, you know, pretty much did all sorts of marketing things for clients, you know, marketing services for clients. So, I mean, to be an agency is like providing, you know, services to a business that they need. And that's probably going to be focused more on like the marketing side, development, design, you know, just ways for them to be able to grow their business and to get clients. If you're working by yourself, you're a freelancer, you know, you may think you have an agency, but you're really just freelancing, you know. Once you start creating a team and whether that's outsourcing, whether that's hiring, you know, in person locally to you, then that's really where you start becoming a true agency, where you start focusing on running the business and growing the business instead of just doing like the tasks that you're given to by your clients. But nowadays, you know, if you're on Facebook, if you're in different Facebook groups, you know, like in mine, then an agency, when we speak of the word agency, most of the time now, it's going to be focusing on generating leads for businesses. You know, whether that's using Facebook advertising, whether that's using YouTube ads, whether that's using Instagram or Google AdWords, you know, there's all sorts of different ways that you can generate leads for your clients. And it's up to you, you know, as the owner of the agency to figure out the best channel to deliver those leads to your clients. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. Depending on whatever channel you're going to be using, right? You're still delivering leads to your clients in order for those leads to become customers and for your client's business to grow and scale.
So how would it work for perhaps a more hands-on business? So let's say someone wanted to do something that they used to do themselves, but then they want maybe to, as you say, branch out to not just work in the business, but also work more on the business instead. How would they go about it? I mean, is it possible to use some form of outsourcing model for something like that? Or would you say it was harder? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, back when I started my agency, I always wanted to do everything that I could on my own. You know, I was very into not letting go of the control of making sure like the quality of the work was there. You know, I didn't want to rely on someone else messing up pretty much, you know. There was some things like the heavy database development and a lot of like the back end coding stuff that I did outsource because, you know, I just didn't have the time. But I was always wary of outsourcing too much because I didn't want to like go control of my business. I felt like if I did that, then I really wasn't running my business the way I wanted to because other people were the one doing the work. You know, fast forward 13 years later, you know, it's totally the opposite. I believe that to scale, you really do have to have a solid team of people that you trust that can do the work for you so you can focus on, you know, a couple different points in your business in order for it to grow and scale, depending on, you know, which direction you want to go, whether that's sales, whether that's just getting in front of more people with events or, you know, speaking. There's so many different directions that you can go for your agency. But I do believe that you do need to outsource, and you can either outsource overseas, you can hire in-house locally to you. You can find referral partners online of people who just focus on the deliverabilities, you know, whether that's Facebook ads, whether that's Google AdWords, you know, whether that's just building websites. It depends on what you're selling, but you can totally outsource pretty much every single aspect of your agency, from prospecting to research to sales to the onboarding to the results. You can pretty much outsource everything.
Right, got you. So it's almost like you've got staff on board then. So as someone that was more hands-on with the work that they used to do, would you say that outsourcing was probably the only option for those people?
It's not the only option because, I could have, if I never outsourced anything, I could have still had a somewhat successful agency. I just think it's a lot harder, especially like right now with everything that I have going on right now. If I were to do everything, like I would get nothing done, So starting off, yeah, you could do everything yourself. Like, especially when you're doing Facebook ads, lead generation for businesses. I mean, you could do the prospecting, you could do the sales, you can onboard, you can run the ads, you can deliver the results and all that. You could do everything yourself, but there's going to be a certain point where you're hitting a bottleneck, and that's time. Time is going to be your bottleneck. So in order to get more time, you got to let go of some of that control that you're doing.
What conversations do you have with the people that you would want to outsource to? I mean, there's a whole host of different interview questions that a lot of people use, but have you got any that perhaps we might not have thought of? So maybe like a handful or maybe less that give you the information that you need to help you maybe trust them with that element of the agency or the business, or just to make sure maybe even you might be able to train them if they give a certain answer, or leave them to it if they give you a different answer? What would your go-to questions be?
Well, it depends on who you want to outsource to. So for example, if you want to outsource to, let's say you're searching through different Facebook groups and you want to outsource, having someone run your ads for you, then you want to make sure that whoever you talk to has a reputation of having success, in that space. In that space would be running Facebook ads, maybe for like chiropractors, for example, right? So you want to make sure that you find someone that can deliver the results that your client expects from you. So if I'm finding someone on Facebook to run the ads for like a specific niche or anything like that, then I want to make sure that they have the results, they have the case studies. I follow them. They talk about exactly what they're doing, on a day-to-day basis. If I see them kind of jumping from niche to niche, or, they're doing web design, they're doing SEO, and then they're trying to sell me on Facebook ads for chiropractors, then I kind of be a little wary as far as, can they really deliver on what on what my client expects of me. So that's a little bit different if I'm looking for like a resource partner like that. Most of all my outsourcing comes from overseas in the Philippines. So it's a little bit of a different, actually it's a lot different from a hiring perspective. I want to hire fast and I want to fire fast as well if people are not delivering on their expectations, on what I expect from them, So I do have like a system where I have them complete certain tasks, specific tasks, and if they don't complete that 100%, then I don't push them further into the interview, So it's just a way to weed out people really, really quickly. Most things can be trained. Most things are an acquired skill. If it's like Facebook advertising, if I don't outsource that, by the way, but if I did, what I want to do is make sure that someone, again, has knowledge of Facebook advertising. They have some case studies. They can show me a video of them going through different accounts, showing me what they've done. If I see that, then I know that if there's any further training that they need, that I can supply them, especially since, that's what I do. I teach other people Facebook advertising. But if it's like SEO, if I need, someone to do SEO for clients of mine, then, I want to make sure that they have proven case studies and they've ranked certain keywords and all this type of stuff. So depending on the position that I'm looking for, there's different requirements and different questions that I ask during that process. But most of the time it's always going to be, you got to complete, this task. This task might have, maybe 20 or 30 subtasks in there that I've detailed out. And if you complete this task, and everyone can complete, this type of task that I give them, because it's generic for everyone. The whole goal is to make sure that they complete everything 100% perfectly. And then if they did, then I kind of take them into the interview a little bit further, where I start diving deep into maybe some of the case studies and ask them more specific questions depending on what their tasks will be for the role.
Right, so it's almost like the more responsibility, or the more intense, I guess, the position that you're wanting someone for, I guess, to be a lot more that'd be expected, or a lot more, I guess, the person going in for the job would probably have an element of, okay, he wants me to do this, this, and this. It's a big job, therefore I probably want to make sure I can prove that I can do it. You seem to mention case studies quite a lot. Is it important for the positions that they've done the position before, so then they've got experience and an example of where they've actually delivered for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's a position where the client's result is 100% dependent on that position. Like, for example, like Facebook ads, right? To deliver leads, the only thing that's stopping the leads from coming in is the campaign on Facebook. If that's what you're running. Same thing with SEO. Like, if you're depending on organic traffic, the only thing that's stopping organic traffic from hitting your website is going to be on, whatever the SEO guy or girl does. That's what they do. So if it's a project, or if it's a position where it's like that, like Facebook ads or SEO, then yeah, I definitely want to make sure that they have experience already. If it's something like, creating content or doing research, anyone can do that, So I mean, there's different positions that you can outsource to that I've, started doing in my agency. So it just depends. Like, if it's a skill that they really need to deliver those results, and I want to make sure that they have the experience, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more for that. If it's something really, really generic, then I'll take anyone, as long as, that task that I've given them that they need to complete, they can do that. And the reason for that is to make sure that they follow instructions, and directions. If someone follows instructions and directions really well, then I can pretty much teach them and show them different things depending on what I want them to do. But with my outsourcing for my businesses, what I don't do is I don't have one person do everything. I have different people assigned to different tasks. So like, you could kind of think of it like an assembly line. I'll have someone doing, task number one, and then once task number one is done, they give it to person number two, and they complete task number two, and then it kind of moves on that way. I found that to be the easiest way for me to manage them, and the best way for me to scale my agency, because if one of those positions gets bottleneck, I can always hire someone else to kind of help them out. Or if I need to let one of those people go, one of those positions go, then I can always find one person to replace that one specific task that I need done. Whereas if I have one person controlling everything and something happens to that person, then that's going to take me a lot of time and resources to find someone that is as good as that person was, that can complete everything that I need done. So it's a lot harder to do that.
Yeah, I can sort of see how that'd be the case. I mean, if someone just did one task, and then obviously they didn't meet the expectations, or they just couldn't keep working, you only got to find one person to do that single task again. But if you've got the one person doing everything, you then need to go out and find someone that can do everything as well. Like, sounds like a much harder task for sure, as you say, Dan. I mean, have you got any go-to tips or things that make an agency work? Now, this can be, I guess we'll probably want to say, it doesn't matter what industry they're in, for want of a better explanation for that. But I think that there could be common themes, if there are common themes. If not, then you feel free to add the industry yourself.
Right. So the question you're asking is like, what industries are easy right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, is there anything that would make an agency successful? Is there any certain principles that don't really take into account the industry, or is it all dependent on the industry that you're in?
No, I mean the if you're going after certain niches and certain industries, I mean, you got to make sure that you do the research in order to understand like all the pain points and the struggles that client is having. If it's lead generation, that those pain points that the clients are having with getting new customers in the door in their business, because then you can have those conversations and you can prospect, and they'll be more receptive to your, whatever that's cold calling or cold emailing or whatever you're using for prospecting. They're going to be a lot more receptive to that because you're peeling away some of those pain points that they have, right? Whereas if you come across someone generic, you're going to come across as just someone who, who just came up with a quick email or something like that, and you just sent it off to 1,000 people and then hoping to land someone. So, I mean, research is going to be critical. And then the research also will come into play once you start running the advertising. Depending on whatever channel you're using, you need to make sure that you do your research in order to come up with, great offers and things like that that will catch the attention of, your targeted users. So I would say, I mean, whatever industry you're going to go into, you really got to know your stuff, and you have to take the time, do your research, talk to a couple of different business owners. Like if you're going after dentists, talk to dentists, just like as a casual conversation, and just figure out like what are some of the struggles that they're having. I think a lot of people, when they start an agency, they dive like deep right into it, and they want to grow really fast. So they start throwing a bunch of stuff together. But if you take the time and kind of do it slowly at a slower pace, I think you're going to have a lot more success on the end.
Right, got it. Yes, it's almost like, it's like doing all the work at the beginning to make the journey a lot smoother and potentially easier as well. All right, so
right, and I think with that being said, real quick, if you look at my group, I did exactly that. Like my group, and this was back before we started the recording, when I mentioned, having grown my group for just over a year, I think it's been like a year and 4 months or so, a year, 5 months, has allowed me to have a large following of, 51,000 people, that if I were to, let's say create a podcast, I could have a large following of that podcast relatively quickly. Whereas if I started the podcast and not have the group, I would maybe struggle trying to grow it, And the same thing with anything else. Like if I want to start a YouTube channel, I could just mention the YouTube channel every day in my group and start getting subscribers. Whereas if I didn't have that group, it would be a lot more difficult and take more time.
Right, and then with that, it's kind of where I'd like to transition to just before we call it, well, a day really, because I want to respect your time, Dan. So we'll probably touch on Facebook groups, and then we'll finish off with the last few questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So when you first started the Facebook group, was there any intention behind how you were growing it? So I don't know if you had a vision for the 51,000 members, or whether it just sort of appeared that way. But what was your intention with it, and did you have like a specific plan for growing the group initially?
So right before, so I started my group, it was December 31st of 2016. So that's the day that I created the group. Backpedal, a couple months, I was getting a lot of people. I was starting to gain some followers on Facebook. I was always showing case studies. I would talk about my results that I was getting in different groups about, my Facebook ads for clients and things like that. So I started having people, in November, December, asking me for consulting on showing them, what I was doing with Facebook advertising. And then in December, I started having people ask me if I had a course that they could buy. And I didn't. So I'm like, okay, I need a, so I'm like, I had one person ask me, then I had two, then I've had five, then I got like 10 people asking me about a course. I'm like, light bulb goes in my head. I'm like, maybe I should start a course, right? Yeah. Because if I have a course, with the followers that I'm starting to gain traction from, they'll buy it. That's the whole goal. So I did that. I started planning on a course, and then I started seeing other people who were selling courses. I'm like, what's the easiest way that I could get people to buy my course? I'm like, I see a lot of people with groups on Facebook. They grow the group, and then from there, like all their sales from their courses come from the group and their email list. You got to think of your group as a list, right? So you have your email list. Like when we think of the word list for business, we think of emails. But it's a lot more than that. You got Facebook groups, you got Instagram followers, you have YouTube subscribers. If you run videos on your business page on Facebook, you can create custom audiences of people who've engaged with your videos. That's also a list. Your friends on Facebook is also a list. So everything that you look at that has a number behind it, think of it as a list, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. So I'm like, okay, I need a way that I could sell my course easy. I'm like, let me just start a group. So I did that December 31st, 2016. I started the group. I was like, I need to think of an easy phrase that will catch people's attention, not too long, that's short and sweet and simple, and that is searchable, because I had some experience with SEO before in the past. I'm like, with Facebook groups, when you type something in the search bar, depending on the amount of people that you have in the group and the keyword placement and things like that, it's going to start ranking higher in the top of the list. So I'm like, I need to think of a very short term that which will catch people's attention. I'm like, one of the terms out there that's searched a lot is the word entrepreneur. So I'm like, okay, I got to start the name with entrepreneur, but I'm like, what else can I add to the back of that to make it pop? And that word hustle kept coming up from what my wife would always tell me that I was growing my agency. I'm like, it just makes sense. I'm like, just entrepreneur hustle is going to be the name of the group. But growing it was just a matter of, having the ideal members in my group. They're all my friends list, which are all marketers. Most of all my friends on Facebook are marketers. So I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I have to give the marketers, what they want, but I have to give it to them in the group so they can join the group. So you're kind of teasing them. I kind of tease people on my wall. For example, like most marketers back then when I started last year, most digital marketers, they wanted funnels and they wanted, campaigns, like walkthrough campaigns of certain niches and things like that. I'm like, instead of just giving that away on my wall, I'm like, I give that away in my group and I have them join the group to get that, and they stay in there, and then I continue providing value day after day after day. And that's exactly what I did, initially to grow the group. So in the first 30 days of my group being live, my goal was to hit 1,000 people, and I think I hit like 16 or 1,800.
Right. So just from the course there, you were able to get over 1,500 just through interest of that, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it was just giving people what they wanted, which is what marketing is about. I gave people what they wanted, but instead of giving it away for free without them giving me anything in return on my wall, what I wanted in return was for them to be a member of my group, because I wanted my whole purpose at that point was to grow the group as fast as I could in order to get sales going for my course, which I launched at the exact same time as my group. So I'm like, it just makes sense, like, to get people in the group for it to grow. So I did that for a long, long time. I started giving away stuff in the group. And now it's just at a point where it just really grows on its own. But it took a while, And again, I'm glad that I did that I grew the group. Took over a year for it to be where it's at now, because all the opportunities that I have that I envisioned in my head, just from the large following that I have in the group, I can go so many different directions, and I won't struggle as much as someone who's starting out, whether that's podcasting or whether that's a YouTube channel or anything else, right? Or it's another course that I have. I won't struggle as much as someone who does not have that following.
So it's almost the kind of thing with an email list as well, is that if you've got it's almost like size matters at that point there, because it gives you the freedom to adjust, to pivot, to change direction, and you've always got those people that you're in contact with. One of the things I've noticed personally is Facebook groups is almost like the next level of that, because with email, there's always that bit of a disconnect between you and the person that you're emailing. But I think a Facebook group is probably easier to build that relationship with them, because of things like pictures and videos, and people see you more often. People can actually reach out and message you, and it seems, at least to me at least, it seems to be more convenient for them.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more convenient, but at the same time, you should always diversify. Because at one point, and I don't know how long ago you had joined the group, but last year, right before summertime, my group was shut down for about a week, so that really freaked me out because again, most of all my core sales came from my group. I would post in the group, I would post results. Like you said, you could go live, you can share case studies, you could do pretty much almost anything in your group, and people will take that content. So when my group was shut down, like all my core sales stopped, because it was all organic. So I think, if someone's going to be growing a group, make sure you also collect emails, and that can easily be done because Facebook group will allow you to ask 3 different questions when someone joins. One of those questions can simply be, what's your email address? Or, would you like this free thing? If you do, what's your email? And I'll make sure you get it, right? So there's like, one of the most important things is that making sure that you collect their email addresses, because at any time, if my Facebook group goes away permanently, I'll have emails from the group,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Because the
So
email list,
go on.
out of every list that you can think of on the internet, the only list that can never be taken away from you is going to be your email list.
Yeah, that's true. So what about like above, say, 10,000 members? So this is going to be the last question regarding Facebook groups, and we'll dive into the last few questions, and then we can finish. What about like post 10,000? Because there's a lot of groups out there that are around 1 or 2,000, maybe even a few that are 5,000, 10,000, but there seems to be a big jump between the groups that are, say, 10 to 15, and then there's the huge groups like yourself and a handful of others that are, just miles above a lot of the other groups that are out there. I mean, is there anything that distinguishes between like your groups and the groups that have less members? Maybe it's a case of you've always worked to build it constantly. You've never, as we were talking about before, you've never got comfortable with it. You've always pushed on, and you've always tried to grow the group. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's something that I can't quite think of right now. I mean, what would you put that down to?
I would say it's it's absolutely consistency. That's going to be important in order for your group to grow. Because if you started and you're posting every day, like I would go live every day, multiple times. I would post multiple times a day. So my members would always see me active, and that would allow them to see my post in the newsfeed more and more, which would allow them to engage more and more. So consistency is going to be definitely important. But at the same time, I think to really grow it big, you have to think of a name for your group that is going to get the reach that you would want it to be, right? So like the word entrepreneur is searched highly. There's other groups out there that have like 80,000 members that have the word entrepreneur in it. So I know I can continue growing the group more and more. But if you have like an obscure name that no one searches, the only people that are going to join it are probably people from your friends list, So just making sure that that term, whatever you name the group, that term is searchable and it's got volume behind it. And, I think another thing that many people may not talk about is you can add certain tags to your group in Facebook. So just making sure those tags have those, other terms that are searchable as well. Like business or like Facebook ads or like entrepreneur. I think those are some of the tags that I have in my group. But like all that, like, the name, the tags, and the consistency, they all play a role, I believe, with each other. And when Facebook sees that you're always showing up, you're always delivering content, you're always going live. Live is a big key indicator that you're doing whatever you can to provide consistent content in your group. Facebook is going to award you, and they're going to show your group to more and more people.
Right, got you. Yeah, it seems like there's a big element of the groups that are more active, and they seem to be more popular as well. All right, so last couple of questions for you, Dan, but before we get to that, if someone wants to find out a bit more about yourself, so what you've got going on, different projects and those sorts of things, where can people go?
Yeah, so if you're on Facebook, definitely Entrepreneur Hustle is the group. You can also visit my website, which is dannyveiga.com. And then my last name is spelled Veiga.
All right, excellent. Right, last question for you then. This is one that I ask all my guests, so it doesn't have to be relevant to what we've spoken about before. We can go completely off topic. And the question is, what would you like the world to know about you that it doesn't already know?
That's a good question. So what would I want the world to know about me that they don't already know? I think just with everything that I'm doing, and everything that I've kind of been through, I love helping people out. So I know that might sound too maybe generic of an answer. But yeah, just knowing, I would like for everyone to know that, I enjoy helping people out. I want to see other people have success, because I've been through those struggles. So if I could help someone, not have to go through as much struggles as I have, because I've kind of been there already, then I can help them do that, but just to let people know, there's so much opportunity nowadays with the internet that you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. And I think having that mindset is super important to get people to where they want to be. So just letting people know, yeah, it's, I can help them do that. But at the same time, there's plenty of opportunities on there. You got millions of Facebook groups, you got millions of YouTube videos. There's anything can be searched online, everything out there, like all the information, it's out there. It's just a matter of piecing it together and making it work for you.
Sounds good, Dan. Well, again, thanks for being a guest on the show. Really appreciate you carving out the time, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Awesome, Michael. Thanks for having me on.